we have things like mold and bacteria, heck, even virus particles that become part of our dust that are opportunistically coming into contact with our body every time we take a breath, which is about 20,000 times per day. So
welcome to Beyond Clean with Ace. In the world of commercial cleaning, newcomers and seasoned professionals know we're more than just toilets, windows, and floors. We're just like everyone else with diverse interests in everything. And over the past 7 seasons, tens of thousands have discovered engaging, thoughtful, and truly game-changing knowledge here. Whether you're a facility manager, a frontline staff member, or a building services contractor, we're here to help you grow both personally and professionally. So hit that subscribe button and share with others, because we're all about enhancing lives in healthy, positive, and proactive ways. Now let's join Dave Thompson, Director of the Academy of Cleaning Excellence, your host here at Beyond Clean with Ace.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dave Thompson, and as you heard in the intro there, I am the director here at the Academy of Cleaning Excellence, where we talk here at Beyond Clean with Ace about anything and everything. Cleaning might be on the agenda, it might not be, and it might be something in the air, something you touched. Who knows what we're going to talk about, because we talk about anything and everything. But you know what? I think last month we had somebody on that, well, it doesn't talk about cleaning as you and I normally talk, but I guarantee you what he's got to talk about is important. And if you missed him last time, catch up, make sure you go back to the podcast and listen to it, because Michael is, well, HomeCleanse. It's not quite exactly what I was thinking when I saw HomeCleanse the first time, Michael.
I know. It isn't quite what you're thinking, but it is. We are cleansing the home, right? And yeah, you said earlier, we might not be talking about cleaning in the way we normally talk about it, but we are going to talk about cleaning for sure. And this time we're talking about cleaning the air. What's really interesting about the air is anything that does get into the air, it does settle amongst our dust, right? And so we have things like mold and bacteria, heck, even virus particles that become part of our dust that are opportunistically coming into contact with our body every time we take a breath, which is about 20,000 times per day. So we are, unfortunately, cleaning the air also becomes a conversation of cleaning the home anyway. So we're definitely going to dive into that.
Yeah, cleaning's cleaning, and viruses and bacteria have their way. And it was interesting. We just did broadcast this morning, and that was one of the things we talked about was how viruses and bacteria and basic microbes of infection travel around, and air is one of the things in dust. Oh my gosh, Michael, I know you have that long laundry list about what's in dust.
Oh yeah. I mean, unfortunately, it's a very long laundry list of what's in dust, but it's all kinds of stuff that we don't want to be breathing in that we unfortunately breathe in. Now, most people think dust is just dead hair and skin cells, and of course, it's going to be part of what's in your dust. But there's also, pet dander if you have pets, and animal proteins if you have pets. It's mold, it's bacteria, it's virus particles. It's going to be, formaldehyde and all kinds of crazy things that you're not suspecting. Heck, if I'm in an older home, could even be some lead paint and some asbestos, right? There's all kinds of things that could potentially be in our dust that we are constantly breathing in. And that's why it's so important. We have to actually reduce dust to improve the quality of air that we're breathing. And again, this is very vital for human health.
Now, if you haven't been with us before, Michael is the founder, as it says here, of HomeCleanse. But Michael, give a quick, brief history of how you came about this before we get on with this, because some people may not have heard about you quite yet.
Yeah, so my name is Michael Rubino, for those that don't know me, or if you didn't watch the first episode, which, by the way, you should. I am a founder of HomeCleanse, a company that is, really geared towards improving air quality indoors all across the country of the United States. And I also am a co-founder and board chairman of Change the Air Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that helps provide people with education, awareness, and resources regarding air quality, as well as policy reform and research that's so desperately needed. So that's a little bit about me. And, one thing that I want you to take away from, whether you listen to last episode or this episode, is I'm here to preach, and I'm here to preach that the quality of air that you're breathing is very, very important to your health.
Well, I'll tell you what, people have listened to me over 8 years now. They know that I like to get to talking and preaching about cleaning. You weren't able to join us on our regular scheduled time because you were doing a documentary?
Yeah, so I'm shooting a documentary right now, which is really exciting. It's called Never Been Sicker. It essentially follows the story of this family who actually happen to be the producers of the documentary, who have been struggling with poor indoor air quality, 5 rental houses in a row now, actually. And so this follows their entire story of how their son has been diagnosed with pandas. He's having neuropsychiatric behavioral disorder due to the poor air quality that he's unfortunately grown up around. Both the mother and father also have been experiencing, acute and chronic symptoms related to the quality of air that they started to breathe when they moved recently for their work. And we're kind of following them through that journey. We interview other experts like myself and some other people as well. You're going to see kind of the process of how a home is properly inspected and what you might find if you properly inspect a home that you might not see behind the surface. And so it's heart-wrenching, it's gut-wrenching, because you're seeing people's pain. But it's also extremely educational in the sense where, we need to have this as a society because it is something that we are very rarely educated about.
As I'm hearing you say this, Michael, I'm thinking this has got to be kind of like a several part series. It can't be just all done in one setting, right?
Well, it's going to be 90 minutes long, so it's going to be on the longer side of documentaries. But can I tell the full story in 90 minutes? Probably not, right? There probably will be much more to tell beyond that. But I think to get people started in a way where they can actually be entertained and get that information at the same time, because it is such an important topic of discussion, I think we're going to be able to pull it off. But yes, there always will be more education needed and much more to follow.
So as you're saying this, I guess you're still in the shooting phase. So we shouldn't be looking for this to be out in maybe this year.
Well, I mean, this year is supposed to be the goal. We're talking later on in this year, but we're eyeing for September, October, somewhere in that time frame. It was supposed to be the last shoot, but we'll see. Sometimes as we review things, we realize, we're missing one piece of this story, but we're getting close, and we should be in post-production pretty soon.
Very, very good. So, folks, if you're listening to the podcast here in the middle of June, you need to keep up with us because I'm sure Michael will let us know when that is produced and ready for us to view. But on the other hand, I'm sure that you can give us some insight about the air we breathe, both in our homes commercially. And you mentioned rental homes. I'm thinking about vacation rentals too.
Well, I mean, think about going away to an Airbnb. As part of the documentary, we actually rented an Airbnb.
Oh,
the place looked amazing, right? It looked nice. I actually had to sleep there, right, the night to film this documentary, and we did an inspection of this Airbnb, like a full-blown home inspection.
Oh my!
And we found out that there were things done to the house that were not up to code, like illegal renovations, to make it look nice, but unfortunately not actually legal in terms of building codes. We found mold, we found water damage, we found pretty much one of the things that these investors neglected to do was replace the windows. They're all pretty much leaking. As a matter of fact, the next morning, as we did the inspection, because I got there, spent the night, got up the next morning, as we did the inspection, it started to rain, and we actually saw water coming into the house at that exact time. So, it's unfortunate. Sometimes we have this mindset where we want to spend as little as we can and start to earn rental income from it. But actually that is going to bite this investor in the butt, because the amount of water damage that's just accumulating every time that it rains, it's massive. And it's actually going to cause so much damage over time, despite the fact that it, is going to become pretty moldy pretty quickly and affect people's health that stay there. Just taking that side out of it, I want to help people understand the investment side of things. When you invest in a property, if you don't actually maintain it properly or fix it properly, and you kind of do the lipstick on a pig model, yes, it seems like you're saving a ton of money up front and that you're going to cash flow. But actually, this person is going to end up having to essentially remove exterior drywall, replace all the windows, probably a lot sooner than they would ever like to. And that could have and should have been part of the initial upfront investment, where they could have had the house perfectly fixed and it could have just been cash flowing at this point, right? And so I only say this because sometimes we have investors that listen to these types of conversations. I want to make sure we are catering to them as well, and they can see that saving a penny today but costing you a fortune tomorrow, not always the best approach.
Well, what's interesting as you say that, Michael, I happen to be getting ready to start working with a vacation rental organization that's all over the United States. And we're going to be talking about proper cleaning procedures and everything for these rental facilities. I did not know this is where you were going with that.
I didn't either until I told you the story, because it happened.
And I think that's an interesting thing here with a podcast, Michael. As we go through a conversation, folks, it just kind of wanders around. And as we said when we started here, Michael, cleaning is cleaning. The air that we breathe, being an asthmatic and a COPD sufferer, I totally understand this. I think there's a lot of people that just don't, well, what are you talking about? There's not a problem. It's just air, your body will handle it. I hear that all the time. Not my body.
It's an unfortunate truth is that people think, well, your body has handled it. Your body's been around mold for, aeons and aeons. And, this is not something that can harm human beings. I think people forget that there are variables that occur throughout decades. One such variable is today's housing. We build a lot tighter of a home than we did 50 years ago. Okay. And so what does that mean essentially? Well, if our homes are better ventilated, then we're essentially diluting the pollution. So 50 years ago, when we used toxic chemicals to clean our houses were breathable houses. And so unfortunately, actually that natural ventilation that we had occurring in our homes definitely helped those toxic particles that we were introducing into our environment evaporate and dissipate much more rapidly than they do today. And that's because today we basically build these spray foam boxes. They have virtually no air exchange. They don't really have any heat loss or cooling loss, which is great. And I think that's why we went down that road. But we also are not diluting the pollution that we as human beings ultimately create. And so when we're actually breathing in the quality of air in a home today, it has a much bigger impact than it did even a decade or two ago. And I think that's part of the variable that we don't account for when we make these blanket statements like, it was never a problem before, our bodies could handle it, our bodies handled it back then, they can handle it now. Unfortunately, these things just aren't true. There's another interesting thing I want to bring up because it is interesting. There is a mold remediation protocol in the Bible, in Leviticus, by the way. And if you are not familiar, you should definitely look it up, but I'll kind of paraphrase for you. They would essentially go in and they would try to clean the stones they would try to remove the mold off the stones by cleaning it. They would have a, priest come in and bless the house. If the mold came back though, they would actually take the entire structure down and carry those tainted stones, about a mile or so outside of the village. And so they understood thousands of years ago how big of a problem that this insidious fungus can be and how it impacts the quality of air and the quality of life of the people living inside these structures, right? So if we knew that information back then, why aren't we applying it now? Especially now where we have much less limited volume of air that we're constantly breathing in. I think the conversation makes it a lot more important.
I agree, because I'm thinking here of how many facilities, as you said, we've been building more airtight buildings than ever before. When we had fresh air, you think of the old South where, I mean, the wind blew right straight through the middle of the house. You didn't hear a lot about it. And we were talking Georgia, here in Florida, and the South where it was hot and musty and tropical. Didn't hear about mold as being a problem.
No, this is before mechanical ventilation systems and AC units, right? You literally had these big, tall ceilings with what we call breezeways. So you would open the front door and the back door, and that would actually be your air conditioning system. And it would flow air from through the front door, through the entire breezeway. These houses also were designed to have staircases, if you could afford a second story back at this time, but they had staircases that would go upstairs. And again, that fresh gust of wind would blow the air, comfortably throughout the rest of the house. And what did people do? They kept doors open, right? And the windows open, and they got fresh air in, and there was tons of ventilation. Houses were made of plaster, not that cheap drywall stuff, right? And so plaster is a lot more resilient to microbial growth than drywall, unfortunately, right? And so even the way in which they built the houses, there was air gaps behind the walls, in between the actual exterior facade structure and the interior walls. The house was doing nothing but breathing. And you know what? So were you. Once we introduced mechanical ventilation systems, we introduced a problem into the mix. And that problem is, well, how do we actually reduce the loss of cooling when we're trying to cool the house, or reduce the loss of heating when we're trying to heat the house? And what they came up with was, well, we got to create temperature. We got to, create insulation to set apart temperature differentials so we don't create condensation, because that was a big issue. And we have to make sure we're actually not exchanging air. We have to build tighter and tighter houses so we could achieve this less loss of energy. And we went in a total different direction, right? Actually, the exact opposite direction. And so now we're in this situation where the amount of particles present inside of a home matters more than it ever has. And this includes mold. This includes bacteria, heck, even viruses. If I have 100 people come over my house right now and have a party, right, I'm going to have a ton of bacteria and viruses and all kinds of things that human beings carry with them as the host. And those particles are going to spread across my house.
Yeah, they're spewing those out all the time, that they're having this good time in the conversation. It's, hey, they're breathing. They're spewing all this back out all over everybody.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm here talking in my room, in my house. I am obviously spewing all kinds of particles into my own room that I am.
That's a nice thing about doing a virtual podcast like this. You're not going to spew it on me.
I'm not spewing it on you, but I am spewing it all over myself and constantly re-inhaling my own bacteria. But
to that point, your body is used to your stuff. You can't get ill from your own. And I tell people this all the time. Just because you're not having a problem with it doesn't mean that other people in the environment aren't, because that's not what their body's used to. There is a difference. Is that not true?
Totally. I mean, what's really interesting about this is I could tell you stories that would blow your mind in terms of how people feel in a household. Typically, when I'm getting called by somebody, I'm called by somebody because they feel unwell. Usually they're dealing with some sort of chronic symptoms, and they really believe that it is their house. And we utilize technology to actually look for abnormalities in their house. And we'll usually recommend they get some, testings from doctors to understand if there are specific environmental toxins that may be accumulating in their body, that their body might be having challenges detoxing. Now, I can't tell you how often there'll be one, maybe two people sick out of a family of 4, and the other 2 feel fine. And it is usually women and children that we see affected the most. It's not to say that we don't see husbands affected, but we typically see, statistically speaking, a lot more women and children being affected than we do typically men. And
so is that because they're spending more time inside that environment and the men are outside of that environment?
Well, there are many different theories. One of the theories is that yes, men are spending more time out, typically out away from the environment. That's one theory. The other theory is that historically toxins are stored in fat cells. Besides maybe me and some other people, historically women have more body fat than men, just naturally, genetically,
Okay.
and so. There's also hormonal theories of different hormones that women produce more rapidly than men that make them more susceptible. But when you look at the framework and what most doctors tell you is it could happen to any of us. Depends a lot on our genetics, epigenetics, on our diet, and the specific species of particulate matter that we're having trouble with. I'll give you a great example. In this family of two that typically I see, you'll have, people definitely experiencing different symptoms inside that family. So the kids might be having behavioral or neuropsychiatric disorders. The mom might be experiencing gut health issues. She might be experiencing chronic fatigue or brain fog. And I would say that the other two, usually they say they don't feel any symptoms. But what's interesting to see is usually when you make changes to the environment and everyone starts to feel better, the other two will be like, since we've made these changes, I've been getting the best sleep of my life. Or, since we did these things, my skin cleared up. I wouldn't have never thought my skin could be it. That's why I never said anything. And usually it'll be more subtle changes where, half the family is dealing with more chronic issues. But the other factor here is like, if four people go away, like let's take COVID, for example, we all remember COVID, right? Two people living in the same household could get COVID, probably from the same place, but experience different symptoms. One person loses their sense of taste and smell, but other than that, they're fine. The other person's bedridden, and they still have their sense of taste and smell. How many stories do we hear of that over the pandemic? I know it happened to me and my wife. She lost her sense of taste and smell. I didn't, right? And so how could two people who are living in the same household that are husband and wife experience completely different symptoms to different illnesses? Well, it's because we're all different. We live in the same household, but we eat different. We have different meals, different frequency of eating. We snack differently. So our epigenetics, part of that epigenetics is different. Our genetics are different, right? We're not from the same bloodline. So
let's hope not. That's not what we want to hear there, Michael.
So that
we're all made of microbes. They're just all different. We're put together differently. We came from different backgrounds. I mean, I know some studies that I saw earlier about how many banned toxins that kids are born with today versus what they were born with in the 30s. It's just astronomical.
Totally. I mean, you got to think about all the things we do throughout our lifetime too, right? I mean, what sort of exposures did my wife have that maybe I didn't have, or what did I have that maybe she didn't have? My mom was a smoker growing up, so I was probably around a lot more secondhand smoke than she was, right? That's gotta be taken into consideration. I mean, you have to really think we are so uniquely different. I mean, statistically speaking, not just do we all look different and act different, but just if you really look at all the infinite variables that exist from the second we're born to now, I mean, of course, we're going to feel differently in the same household. Of course, I might have more environmental susceptibility than you might have, and you might have more susceptibility to certain viruses than I might have, or bacteria than I might have. And that's okay, because that's actually pretty normal if you actually really take a look at this. Right. However, what does that mean for everybody else? Well, it means that if we live in a house, and unfortunately, this is, we're not going back to an outdoor lifestyle.
I was going to say, let's not. Hey, folks, I didn't mean that we wanted to go back to the open breezeways and no air conditioning. Now, Michael, I did not say that. I live in Florida. It's 95 right now. I need my air.
I'll tell you, I mean, there are certain genies that are not going back in that bottle, okay?
That's right.
What we need to look at is, okay, with what we have, there are so many creature comforts that we've come to know and love. that we just will not move on from. So the real goal isn't how do we go back in time? The real goal is how do we take where we are and make things better? And we do that by adding more ventilation to our homes, like through ERV systems, right? We do that by upgrading filtration systems in our HVAC units so that the lungs of our houses are safer and cleaner. We look at different air purification strategies that we can employ in places we spend the most time. We look at throwing away chemicals, right? And start buying botanical alternatives so we can clean up this dust without adding more toxins into the mix. And
you start bringing in chemicals there, you're going to trip my trigger here.
Well, I do want to trip your trigger a little bit because that's why we're here. I mean, I'll tell you, it's obviously.
And to your point, Michael, whenever you said the chemicals and everything, I tell people this, and if you've listened to the podcast, you've probably heard this before. I tell people, go under the kitchen sink and look where you keep your chemicals, because most everybody keeps them there. And if that chemical burnt a ring into the wood where it's sitting, just think about it, what it's doing to your lungs. If it does it through the bottle or into that wood, do you really need that chemical in your house? I don't care what it does. It's doing that to you. I mean, am I off base here?
No, I mean, honestly, if you think about it, you've got a non-porous material that it's typically kept in, plastic. It is so strong, it's actually seeping through a non-porous material such as plastic, literally into the bottom wood panel underneath that. That is not good. That means that it is obviously dissipating through the plastic. It's already impacting the quality of air you're breathing. Now, obviously, it's going to be much more concentrated in the kitchen where you're storing it, but then you're going to use that product, and you're going to use that all over the house, depending on what you're cleaning and when you're cleaning it.
Here's my other point. Think about this, Michael. Why do we keep it under the kitchen sink where we're breathing in and we're preparing our food? Why do we store the cleaning chemicals, no matter what they are, there? I mean, where did we get this idea that was the best place to put them?
I don't know. It's just as bad as trying to store them in your fridge at this point. We should probably move them to the garage or somewhere else, or maybe, I don't know, throw them away entirely, right?
Well, now, when you said that, Michael, then this was a number of years ago, probably a good 10 years ago, that I was doing some green cleaning with some students across the pond, and he said they actually took some of their cleaning containers, threw them in the dumpster, and the trash people wouldn't take them because they considered those cleaning chemical containers hazardous waste.
Wow.
And that was after the chemical was gone. That was just the bottle. They wouldn't take them because they were considered hazardous waste. I thought that was, man, where would we be if that's what happened all over the U.S., Michael?
They wouldn't take them because they're hazardous waste. So these plastic empty bottles are hazardous waste, yet they're totally fine for us to buy, put in our car, and travel with from the grocery store till we get home, use in our house the entire time we're using it. But then we can't get rid of the empty container because the empty container is classified as hazardous waste. Does that not strike you as, I don't know, idiotic?
But it does bear the point to think about this. And I think that's what conversations like this are about, Michael. It's just, folks, think about what's going on and how it's affecting you. I mean, the purpose of talking with you, Michael, is about the air that we breathe. And we in cleaning, we're so focused on what we touch, and that's good, and we should be. Don't want to get that wrong. But you mentioned air purifiers. We didn't hear much about that until maybe 15 years ago, very much. Is that so new, really?
Well, I would say that it probably is that new in terms of actually, thinking about air purification as a technology that we should use in a residential setting. I mean, I would argue that air purification systems have existed much longer than that, because technically anything with a filter on it that is moving air through a filter is an air purification device. So our HVAC systems inherently are air purification devices just by that ideology and function of what they actually do. The problem is that not all filters are created equal. And I would say the attention to air purification systems as something that we need to have has become more prominent in the last 15 years. And I think that honestly, if we saw the air purification industry when COVID was happening, you couldn't keep these things on the shelves. As a matter of fact, so many companies were having manufacturing issues with air purification systems and the filters, mainly because the filters, same material they use for masks, was part of the issue. But now all of a sudden, I'm talking air purification companies, and it's like back to a ghost town. Nobody's buying them anymore. They stocked up on COVID. Nobody's been buying them since, and we've just kind of, gone right back to
where
status
we were.
quo, which is, part of the issue is we need to get out of status quo so we could prevent the next, major health issue by controlling the quality of air that we're all breathing indoors. Because if it wasn't clear to you before, when we talked about how, people come over and we spread and exchange particles, unfortunately, just how life works.
Hey, well, I would rather exchange particles with you than you not be there to do that. I mean, hey, we'll say it that way.
Yeah, sure. But we can definitely set up our homes in a way where people can come over and it's totally fine. The goal isn't to obviously live in fear.
Right.
The goal is to actually just improve the quality of air that we're breathing. And how you do that is actually limiting the amount of particles you're exposed to. Now, does that mean that I never have people over? No, because I'm not trying to limit the fun that I want to have. I'm just trying to limit the particles, right? So
right, yeah,
I employ strategies.
You got to wear a mask the whole time. It's not any fun.
No, so I don't wear a mask in my own house when I have people over, and I don't wear a mask when I go over to people's houses. That's not what I'm talking about. It's not necessary. Maybe if we're dealing with a massive pandemic and, there are things we are still learning about said pandemic, I can understand that. But we're talking everyday life here. To reduce the amount of exposure, the amount of particles you're being exposed to, you do that through things like filtration. You do that through things like air purification systems, and by making some rules like, hey guys, you can come over, but take your shoes off at the front door. We don't need your 400,000 units of bacteria traveling with you throughout the house, right? That was from an Arizona
study. Wait a minute. You don't walk up to the door and say, "Do you have an air purifier in the house?"
No, I don't go that far, but it does come up in conversation. Believe me. Yeah,
I just could hear some people thinking that in the background. I had to let that one out.
Yeah, I'm not the guy you typically invite over for Thanksgiving, right? So
yeah, I was going to say, hey, man, he's doing documentaries on it. He's an expert on air quality. He takes his shoes off when he comes to the front door. Next thing, do you have a filter working? And he's going to check and see if the filter's doing what it's supposed to. Do we want Michael at the front door?
I'm a terrible house guest. No, it's actually really funny because even when I see people wearing shoes in their own house, I still take shoes off in their house when I enter their house.
Really?
It's become a habit. I have to take my shoes off. I know because once you don't want to kind of do that. So I usually take off my shoes at the front door. Even if they're wearing shoes, they'll usually say something like, "Hey, that's not necessary." I'd be like, "I'm gonna do it anyway. Don't worry." And come in, and then I'll casually bring up in conversation. That a lot of you walk through a lot of stuff. I mean, one study in Arizona, 420,000 units of bacteria, or maybe it's 412,000. Either way, a lot of bacteria. You should really, consider taking your shoes off at the front door. Anyone who follows me on social media that has the unfortunate, an unfortunateness to be my friend, they've all seen me preach this stuff. But every time I have an opportunity, I do.
You got to preach a gospel, man.
Got to preach. Got to let people know because people aren't thinking about it. Sometimes when the conversation comes up and we're talking somehow about pillowcases, I throw in there, you got more bacteria on your pillowcase than on your toilet seat. You better make sure you wash your pillowcases once a week. I mean, don't worry. I get to work these into the conversation as much as possible.
Oh, totally. My wife, I can tell you over 26 years, she's like, just don't get started, please, tonight. At least not on the first visit, please. Just kind of back off a little bit. But it is, Michael, I think what you're talking about, I've been in the cleaning industry for over 50 years. It's just what I do. It is a part of me. And I think that's the difference between, as you said, when you just do. It's just the right thing. I'm going to make an assumption here. I might be wrong, But I bet you don't let pets on the bed either.
Yeah, I do not let pets on the bed. As a matter of fact, I don't have any pets, and it's sad because I grew up with pets as a kid. But I know too many things, and so if I had a dog here, right, I'd have to first train the dog how to go outside, right, so we're not peeing or pooping inside the house. I'm very concerned about damage that pets can unfortunately do, to the actual house itself. But also, yeah, I mean, pets jumping up and sleeping on the bed. If pets do go outside, you really need to wipe their paws, which is a very impractical thing because they typically run in and out, because you could also pick up bacteria and mold from the soil outside. And so let's just say I know too much for my own good to have pets living in my house impacting the quality of air. But
okay, so I know about this, and we do have a cat. And he does come in, but I will tell you, as we're taping this right now, I have no carpet in the house. My sofa that the cat comes up and sits on is washable, wipeable, it's not upholstery, if you will.
Right.
He doesn't come onto the bed. And if he does, which, hey, animals are animals, we wash the sheets every week, and we have a vinyl cover over the mattress that's taken off every week and washed. I used to work with an organization that had a spray that was probiotics type sprays that we could spray on the pillows. And I really wish I could get that back, because I really did recognize that when I sprayed those pillows in between washings, like every morning, spray them before you leave for the day, it did make a difference in my breathing through the night.
Wow. Yeah. So it's probably the good bacteria that's eating away some of the bad bacteria that you're essentially
that my body gave off during the sleeping.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's a good thing. And there's a few manufacturers that are making similar products. The trick is don't overdo it. Some people got the idea of, instead of just spraying it on the pillow, they just started spraying it all over the house. As a matter of fact, there's one client actually had an automatic spray where he put the solution into this automatic spray, and every minute they would just pump it out. And when you read the manufacturer's directions, of course, it does not tell you to spray it that frequently.
No.
Lo and behold, they actually had the opposite effect, where they had too much bacteria. It was good bacteria, but too much of anything is still a problem. They had way
Life
too
is
much.
a balance.
Right. Yeah. You need balance. That's what they say.
I mean, and you think about it, is we are a chemistry set, and we have to have balance in all of that chemical, good and bad. Whenever you talk about bacteria, we're only talking about anywhere from 8 to 10% is bad. The rest of it's good. But as you said, we can overuse anything and create that unbalance.
Exactly. Yeah. So with that being said, you got to make sure you're not overdoing it. But those solutions, when used properly, those are really awesome solutions. And I feel bad that I don't have a pet, and my kids beg me every day for a pet. And I'm sure one day I'll cave because I really do love pets, and I grew up with pets. But, it's when everything, you're like, if I'm going to do this, I've got to think of all these different things that I got to come up with to make sure I've got, a pet proof house specifically designed to improve air quality. And it's not easy to do. And you definitely need to, have some help around the house. Everybody's got to agree, these are the rules and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, it's the policy. And the thing is, with anything like this, Michael, I think what you and I both, whether we're talking about cleaning the air or cleaning surfaces, whatever it might be, this is the number one tool that we've got to work with. And folks, if you're listening to the podcast while I was doing it, pointing to my brain.
Yeah. Hey, right. Yeah, you got your mind is the most powerful tool, and we have to obviously be aware. And once we're aware, become educated. And once we're educated, make amazing decisions. And a lot of what we need to do as human beings is, once we have that awareness and education, we've got to create policies, procedures, how to keep this home safe and clean. And, clean can mean many different things. 50 years ago, clean meant, it smelled like chemicals. That's how we knew it was clean. Today we understand that clean doesn't have a smell. It's actually the absence of a smell, right?
Correct.
And we can achieve that a real clean environment by using products that are designed to clean without harming in the process. And I think I always want to harp on that because removing mold is a big part of what I do for people. It's like the common denominator of poor air quality. And I say common denominator because it's easier to detect from a technology standpoint using current tools and technology, but it all kind of points to the same thing, right? Water is intruding into the environment and is creating a whole host of different microbiological contaminants that create an imbalance in the microbiome that you are living in. And the goal is to get it back in balance. And you do so by figuring out, well, what are the root causes that allowed it to get out of balance? And so when I'm doing that, one of the things that I do at HomeCleanse was we wanted to make sure we're doing it in a way where we're not adding toxins to remove toxins. And so every product we use is botanical or non-toxic for that specific reason, because today you can clean things very effectively without needing to add toxins. If it says on that bottle that you need to use this in a well-ventilated space, well, don't buy
it. You might want to think about that. Even with those products, I know one of the things that I preach on, here we go preaching again, but it doesn't matter what it is, whatever kind of chemistry, and bio products are still chemistry of some sort, is that we need to rinse the surfaces once we've used this chemistry, no matter what chemistry it is. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, anything is going to leave some sort of residue, and so you definitely want to remove the residue, because otherwise, again, that residue is going to off-gas particulate matter that you will be breathing in. And so how do you get rid of that? You rinse it.
So you would be agreeable whenever I say, hey, when you run your car through the car wash, you do rinse it. You don't leave the soap on it. You do rinse your laundry. You don't leave the soap on them. You go through the shower, you rinse the soap off. Even if it doesn't say to rinse on the bottle, I know those two words don't go together, but it just makes sense to me.
It does. Yeah, you do need to rinse your products off of your belongings. So, it's like you gave great examples already, but you wouldn't, wash your dishes and, leave this residue on the dishes and then eat off of that, right? If you did, you'd probably taste a lot of soap when you were finished eating. These are things that, again, even though they're safer, more natural or botanical, it's not something that is meant for you to be consuming large copious amounts of, right? And so even, I say this all the time, but you probably have heard the phrase, too much of anything can kill you, right? I drink 1 cup of coffee and it's a stimulant. I drink 100 cups of coffee and my heart stops, right? And so everything has to be done in some level of moderation. Well, soap too, right? Anything. I mean, go out in a dust storm and inhale a bunch of dust and you're likely not to feel well. Otherwise, the dust might not bother you in small amounts, right? So it's just thinking about this in terms of too much of anything is no good for you. Well, rinsing the belongings you're cleaning, even when you're using safer alternative products, it just allows those products to dissipate. So you're not constantly inhaling or being, exposed to those as well, even though they are safer.
So folks, you've been with us for 40 minutes on this podcast. Michael was on with us last month. He'll be on with us every month now through the rest of this year. I'm sure you can join us for all of these podcasts. If you can't, they're always there for you to look at, subscribe and like this channel. You'll be able to get all of those and you'll know when a new one's coming up. If you're watching the video, you can see Michael's address there if you want to get a hold of Michael particularly and talk to him about HomeCleanse and all the things he has there, or any of the other mold remediation and other things. Before we go, Michael, what would be the top #1 thing that people should do to make their home more air safe?
Okay. So, there are a lot of things you can do, right? And I know I don't remember what I recommended in the last episode particularly, but if I had to guess, it was probably a lot more top line here. And so today, because we talked about taking your shoes off at the front door so much, and I beat that into your head,
Right.
I'm going to tell you that today, one of the top things that you can do to improve the quality of air you're breathing, simple yet effective, is take your shoes off at the front door. Have a no shoes in the house rule. Now, if you have carpet in your house, this is 10 times worse for you to have your shoes on while you're in the house, because that carpet acts like a sponge, soaks up a lot of the bacteria, mold, you name it. And so I would say take your shoes off at the front door as one major takeaway from this month's episode that I want you to do. Something simple you could start to do right now to improve the quality of air you're breathing. Please do it.
Well, you know what? I'm not too far behind you there, but, we got rid of all the carpet, so that's gone. I have a central vacuum where my filter and my airflow is not in my living environment. And we vacuum everything 3 times a week. And before you come to the house, every day we blow all of the dirt off. And I've got 4 mats in the, before you ever get in the house.
That's awesome. See, you're already making these maneuvers.
Well, hey, whenever you're a chronic sufferer from COPD, suffer with what I do and all of the issues that go with it, you just learn a few things. And as you said, Michael, it's just what we do when we know.
That's it, and unfortunately, no one ever wants to get to the point of chronic illness before they learn, life lessons. But, just like what you've experienced, a lot of my clients are experiencing chronic illness and severe issues that could have been avoidable, right? And so what we're trying to do is educate people and help them avoid some of the mistakes we've made in the past that could lead to health effects. And hopefully, if you're listening, you're taking it serious.
So, folks, once again, if you are on our YouTube channel and you're watching, as it says right here, follow us here at the Academy of Cleaning Excellence. Make sure that you subscribe to it. Share this with other people. That's what Michael and I are saying. This word is only good for those people that hear it. Please interact with us. We'd love to hear from you. Maybe they'll come up with some suggestions for our topic next month, Michael.
That'd be amazing. Yeah, please. If you have anything that you want to specifically cover, let us know so that when we film next month, we can speak directly to you and what you're looking to accomplish.
If you live in the state of Florida, both of us are here in the state of Florida, so we understand what you're talking about. And I also say we're also world travelers, so we can talk to you about any other environment because it is different wherever you might live. So, folks, thank you for listening. And until we talk with you again here at Beyond Clean next month or next week, whatever it might be, please make sure that you keep it healthy, positive, and proactive. Thanks for coming on, Michael.
Thanks so much for having me.